I say that if it ain't broke, don't fix it, but as anyone who's ever seen an episode of Man vs. Wild can attest to, conventional wisdom can only get you so far. So seems to be the logic of the chairman of the AFL Rules Committee by introducing the sub-rule and the concussion rule, which may as well be named the O-Balls. We better give them a reason to use the sub-rule rule. This comes despite a chorus of public outcries from AFL coaches so united in their hatred of the new changes that they may as well be singing in the same Catholic boys' choir. The kind where despite the protests, all the members are still molested by the guys in charge, and even the fat ones who weren't touched spend the rest of their lives questioning why. The cynic in me sees this new sub-rule as a giant fuck you to 2010 premiers Collingwood and the high rotation policy that saw them switch their personnel more often than the actresses who played Marta in Arrested Development. The AFL have been keen to argue that high interchange leads to injury, but their whole argument feels remarkably falsified when you consider that the most rotated team of 2010 won the flag in a canter with a clean bill of health, while the lowest rotated team of 2010 hobbled out the year with more injury concerns than James Caan in misery, not to mention a coach with more issues than Kathy Bates in misery. It's not like the AFL haven't introduced these anti-reigning premier laws before. The anti-tagging interpretations got the Swans, the rush behind rule got the Hawks, and as a bonus, Joel Bowden. And when the Rules Committee couldn't work out how to get Geelong, the AFL magically invented a brand new team in the hometown of half the family of the league's best player. The only reason we didn't see any new rules introduced to wipe out the West Coast midfield is that the West Coast midfield got very proactive on that one. The concussion rule was presumably introduced to ensure that Joel Selwood lives past the age of 30. I had initially hoped that such a rule might inspire some of the game's shrinking violets to harden up in the hopes of doling out a couple of game-ending concussions with all the brutal power of Dolph Lundgren in Rocky IV, rather than prancing around with all the unintentional homoeroticism of Dolph Lundgren in Showdown in Little Tokyo. But what I saw instead was a proliferation of players as hellbent on losing consciousness as Brendan Favola at a Brownlow function. The only logical explanation I can come up with is that the AFL have mastered some form of inception, whereby simply mentioning the word concussion was sufficient for half the league to ritualistically knock themselves out. Not exactly planting the idea as deep as DiCaprio and co, but fuck me if it didn't work on Selwood, who drove his head so violently into the backside of Fran Ray that he could have been forgiven for mistaking the incident as an audition tape for the sequel to The Human Centipede. And for the sake of a decent segue, I might have to start referring to Adrian Anderson as the one-man centipede, because going by his premature endorsement of both these roles after only 1 week of competition, it's pretty clear he's got his head buried most of the way up his own backside, and even then he strikes me as the type who'd probably enjoy it.